Hey guys, Anthony again here with Austin Historical Weapons Guild, here with Andreas, as again at our new home in Vigilante here in Austin. Today again, going back into Jude Lew, today starting at page 127 of this nice big blue and yellow book here. So continuing from the gloss, or from the Zettel. Zwer to the flug, harm the ox hard. A good zwer is a danger to the head with a leap. So the gloss is, note you have heard that the ox and the flug are called two positions or guards. They are also called four openings. The ox is the upper two openings on the right and left side of the head. The flug is the lower two openings, also on the right and left side, below the opponent's belt. In a Zuvectin, you shall try to hit all four openings with the Zver strikes. So this again is just a gloss, the original poem of the Zettel, and saying that from the Zuvectin before the fencing begins, you should attack with a Zverhau to any of those four openings that are open. Obviously, not saying hit all four at once, but just being aware that, yes, you should be able to, with your skill, with your practice, hit any of those four openings. So briefly, just using Andreas as a pal in this instance, just told you sort up out of the way, right? So if I come in, I want to Zver, it's with a good leap. I want to be able to Zver to the head. I want to Zver to flug, to low, to that below the belt, to the arm, basically. I'm going to be able to Zver to the opposite side. And we assume there's no directions otherwise. I'm going to spring this way to strike those, and here to strike there. Notice with all these attacks, all these intentions, my hand is high, pressed out in front of my head, because that's one of the key safety facets of doing a good Zwerkow, is that you need this up. I'm not dropping these low to strike these, leaving my head exposed. I'm keeping everything braced high, leaning if I need that distance, not lowering my arms. So good foundation, good principles, not a whole lot of excitement in that part. Additional gloss notes is notice the Zver strikes to the four openings. So item, when you approach him in the Zufectin, and he's standing against you in the guard Vom Tag, then jump with your right foot against him decisively to your right side, striking with his Zver with all your art to the ox on his left side. So I'm jumping to my right, hitting his left. When he displaces the strike instantly below to the flug on his right side. So we're switching sides after he parries. Continue to execute the Zver strikes nimbly, always one to the ox and the other one to the flug, crosswise from one side to the other to the head and to the body. So a lot in there, staying a little bit. And again, only starting at the half. So we'll kind of play with that, break that down a little bit. So pretty straightforward. I'm coming to him in the Zufectin into pre-fencing. I'm striking first. I'm not reacting to his attack, and he's in Todd. So again, I'm going to start, like we talked about last week. That's very how I'm going to start with that on the outside of the shoulder to really make sure I'm training myself to put that all the way across my body, right? So not up here where I do shorter motions, nice and wide, pulling all the way across. So I'm leaping to my right, striking to the left. As he parries strongly from here, immediately, actually dropping this low to his flug. So again, same thing. I leap, I strike, and I come down low.
I'm glad I know what's happening.
I stopped it. So as you can see, I can do this very quickly, and I'm not really waiting for myself to even resettle from my landing, right? And that has to do a lot with timing the body parts, but he wants that immediate attack, immediate follow through. So I come here, I come, and I'm down low. And if he blocks this one, right, I'm going to keep going. I'm moving surround, always going high to low, high to low. Just for entertainment and thoroughness, something I would do is we're going to try flipping that over. Right now, Zverk to your left, then go to the right flug. So just the mirror. So you're up in Tog. I'm going to switch my feet for this so I can leap a little better. I'm going to come here, there. So you immediately see, I actually got his arm a little bit, depending how good he makes that parry coming across. But I'm automatically queued up. If he makes that parry and goes a little bit wider with it, I'm right back to that strike to the head. But I'm definitely not getting any sort of redoubled, any extra steps out of it. And it's very much a immediate, as soon as he makes that parry, as soon as he feels that connection, I want to be working that next opening, working the next side of attack. Second item under that same heading, you shall also remember always to jump with every square strike far to one side. Thus, you will hit him with this well at the head. Look out that you are covered in this moment with the hilt in front of your head. So kind of what I mentioned before, making sure that hilt is up high in front of your head. He does say, and this is kind of what I've been doing, I believe, that you only want to leap with one side. So I know a lot of people, myself included, have really thought of this idea that when I make my sphere, I come here, then I come here, and then I come here, right? And I kind of get stuck. My interpretation of this, especially after doing that previous demo, previous drill, is that I don't want to leap twice. I'm just always attacking one side. So when I come up here, I'm 1, 2, and I come wide again. And you can see he immediately has to redouble his effort to control that angle as I'm constantly wrapping around him, but I'm still striking to both sides of his body. So definitely an interesting tidbit to look at and play with as you go through this. Next line, black, so this is from the Zettel again. The feller misleads or leads the weapon. From below it touches as it desires. So the gloss, notice the feller is a piece to deceive and hit those fencers who like to displace and who strike to the sword rather than to the openings of the body at one's own will. So even before we start going into the items descriptions of this, I think this is really worth talking about. So we all know that if you swing at the other person's sword, it's bad and that you'll be shamed and bad things happen to you. We've talked about that a lot, I'm sure. But also who like to displace. So there are two different people. So if someone who likes to displace and strike the sword rather than the ones opening the bot at the openings. And I feel like, at least in this reading, this iteration, this day, that talks about two different kinds of fencers. One who will displace, and the displacement can be things like Absetsin, things like that, where you're just trying to catch and displace the sword, where you're not really striking at it, and then someone who's striking at the sword. And yes, you can argue displacement. So if Andreas cuts at me, my displacement, my Absetsin here is striking at the sword, but it's a much different feeling than if I cut at a sword very literally like that. So they're both symptoms or signifiers of the same kind of principle of fencing, where I'm not with my Absetsin, right? Even if I do a nice proper Absetsin, I'm still pushing at his sword. I'm not Absetsining by kind of trying to thin this needle of a thrust, because that's probably not going to work. I'm relying on his contact to either redirect my blade into him or enough to stop his blade that I have that moment to catch it through. And even that is better than someone who just fenced at the other person's sword, because if I just swing at his sword here, right, he has all sorts of terrible things he can do, where if he did that against my Absetsin, right, I have a lot more action, a lot more time to work on those things. So he's specifically saying, so he's not saying that those actions are inherently wrong or bad. And I think that's something important to keep in mind and remember as we're doing these things. But that if someone shows that proclivity, someone who says, like, I'm going to wait for you, and as soon as you cut, I'm going to set your sword aside, right? Someone who does that is someone you can do failures against. And I think that's an important concept to understand, not only as we go into the failure section, but when you're fighting and training yourself as well, of like, okay, so I can do an Absetsin, but that opens me up to failures. And I can swing at a person's sword, but I don't know. I don't think that should ever happen. Maybe he'll say otherwise. So moving on. Item, do the failure as follows. When you approach him in the Zufekten, strike the Unterhau from both sides. If you can reach him with an Unterhau from your right side, shoot the point long at his chest, so he has to displace. Jump promptly with the left foot to his right side and pretend to hit him there with his Verkau. Jerk your strike short and strike instantly again to the left side. And then we see what happens with left side. Oh, same thing. Or else when you reach the left side, shoot the point long to his chest and do the following piece, which is written hereafter. So two options. And this is an interesting kind of setup, right? So if I'm looking to, that's not even accurate. So he's giving us a way of approaching Zufekten, which is basically, if Andres is on the other side of the room, I'm just cutting across with rising cuts, right? Except better than that, I just don't have the space here. don't throw your rising cuts with bent arms. But if I'm approaching with these cuts and I get to the place where I need to thrust, I get to the place where I can hit him with this cut. He's not saying that I should strike this cut, but I should throw out my thrust, right? So we're already changing the game, even if our opponent's not aware of it, right? So instead of rising cut, if this rising cut would hit, instead of throwing a rising cut, I should be going thrust. So he has to set that aside. As he sets it aside hard, I'm going to spring left foot to his right side, come around, pull that short, and actually strike at the same instant to his right. There's a lot to unpack, so I'll run through that one more time, then start to break it down. So I'm throwing rising cuts across the room. I get here. I go to throw my next rising cut, but instead I throw it as a thrust and make him commit. I leap to the far left, pull it away, and hit him in that moment to the right. So one of the interesting things I'm seeing with this is that transition of rising cuts to that thrust. You need to stay in frame. Right? So instead of doing this as a rising cut where I want to finish here, he's now saying, throw this as a thrust. And whether that means instead of finishing high, I finish long and put out a thrust to follow through with, you can nitpick and argue and figure out what happens. And a lot of that really depends on what his reaction is going to be, right? Because he could sit static and not react to this and make me need to commit this thrust from there. Or if he approaches in with a cut as I'm throwing my rising cut, right now, this thrust is a different beast altogether. And kind of playing with that. So kind of being aware that these motions, these options tie into, this is actually a zoo action, right? I don't know what he's going to do. Because I don't know what he's going to do, I'm just going to close space, throwing these big motions until he does something. Or until I get close enough to attack. So as he goes to parry this away, I come across, and calling this short, I just turn this and strike through. And I want to reread that description of that again, because I think it's an interesting vision, word picture that he paints for us. So jump prompt with the left foot to his right side and pretend to hit him there with his verhau. Jerk your strike short and strike instantly again to the left side. So just playing with that, because that's where the real failure is, right? We have this really nice kind of flowy, showy entrance, which is an interesting idea because how many times in a tournament or even a sparring do you see someone cross a room with cuts, right? Almost never. So the fact that he's suggesting to do that is definitely something interesting to kind of think about and play with in your own fencing, your own styles, as you kind of progress from there. But we're going to start with that kind of jerking your cut short and cutting instantly. So he's displaced my thrust. I'm here. So I'm going to leap, but I need to jerk this short. And the way I really kind of sell that and make that happen is collapsing my elbows, right? So a good cut of any type, right? I want to keep my arms extended and use that lever from my hips through my arms to push through. If I want that to stop, the easiest thing that I can control is bending my elbows. I don't want to think about pulling the sword back because now I'm trying to fight everything from my hips and my torso and my shoulders. If I just bend my elbows, I can change where the angle of the sword, the momentum of the sword is going, and I can easily and quickly redirect it around to the other side. And I think that makes it a really good, both of a use of a failure of being able to throw that, but an easy way to get yourself to think of how do I get that motion to happen. All right, so for here, and I spring, I just bend that elbow, pull those hands back to my head, and I can turn and uncoil again to the opposite side as the text describes. The second half, or else when you reach him with an Unterhau from the left side, shoot the point long to his chest and do the following piece, which is written hereafter. So I have no idea what the hereafter is, so hopefully this will make sense. We're moving on. The Wecker forces Durchlaufen as well as wrestling. Take the elbow with certainty and spring into his balance. There's a whole bunch of secret words in here that if you don't have previous background knowledge of things that aren't going to make a lot of sense. So Wecker is the inverter. Durchlaufen is changing or running through. And then spring into his balance is something is a phrase from ringing or wrestling. And make you hold this for a quick second.
Mhm.
So balance, and I'm not the ringing person to be asking about this, but I know that the balance stance in wrestling is when you're evenly weighted on your feet, whether it's one forward, one back, I can still be in balance. I'm not like front leaned or back leaned. I'm in the balance. So when you're springing into his balance, my immediate gut reaction says, he already talked about wrestling. Durchlaufen is a setup for wrestling and ringing on the sword. So when I hear spring in the balance, I'm definitely thinking like, all right, he's going to be in this kind of middle position where he's not over leaned forward one way or the other, but he's kind of here, and I'm going to spring into this position and take him and set up a throw. So that's kind of my immediate gut reaction reading into this before we even start. So notice you shall do the Wecker, the inverter, and the Zufectin in a concealed way. Thus, you besiege the opponent that you can do a Durchlaufen and grab him well with wrestling. See? So do the Wecker as follows. When you've come halfway to him in the Zufectin, already we're getting complicated wording. When you come halfway to him in the Zufectin, go ahead in the second half, always with the left foot forward. After each step, strike from the right side a free Unterhau following a left foot. Twist and turn the long edge of the, this makes no sense. Twist and turn the long edge of the sword during the strike, always upward. As soon as you bind the sword with this, hang in the point end as above and thrust to his face. If he displaces the thrust and goes up high with his arms, then make a Durchlaufen running through.
Oh boy.
I think that's plenty to work with right now. We're not anywhere yet. So we need to line up a thrust. All right. So you come halfway to him in the Zufectin.
Uh-huh.
Go ahead in the second half, always to the left foot forward. So he's basically saying like you're halfway there, halfway to the fight. Now stay yourself left foot forward. After each step, whether he means after this step or after the redouble step, could mean either. My instinct is going to be I should be throwing this cut here, but we'll see. After each step, strike from the right side a free Unterhau following the left foot. So yeah, so left foot moves forward, I throw a cut and gather myself through. Twist and turn the long edge of the sword during the strike, always upward. So we want the long edge always up. We're not following a cut through, but like always turning this up across things, which is weird and counterintuitive. So we'll see if that's wrong or not. As soon as you bind to his sword with this, hang in the point end as above and thrust to his face. All right, let's play with that.
Oh boy.
I'm going to stab you in the face.
Oh god. Not again.
All right, so I'm starting nice and back, always throwing these positions here, right? So notice I'm really focusing as I'm doing this, keep that long edge up. I'm not throwing a cut like that. I'm going step. How's that feel?
Threatening. All right. So I
You
should
displace.
react.
Yeah, you should displace.
Okay.
As soon as you bind at his sword with this, hang in the point end as above and thrust to his face. So that gives me a whole lot to work with, which is interesting. They don't say where he's starting in. The general assumption tends to be Vontag. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe with the way I'm moving, I'm acting. Like even if he's starting down an Elber, right? What's your reaction how to deal with this? Yeah, right. Well, because my long edge is up, I need to wind this to the point, right? And if I throw like a normal cut, like I'm trying to clear a cut or something proper, right? I have a significantly harder time getting that leverage up compared to when I started here. So again, keeping my point, my edge vertical as I throw these. Surprisingly effective. So again, throwing normal cuts, zooming through. Yeah, I'm definitely having a much harder time displacing that. All right, so there you are, step one, proof one of the vector, at least this version, this concept of the vector, is keeping that long edge super vertical. I'm not going to see anything in videos, but believe me, I'm keeping long edge up like this as opposed to making a cutting line with this. So really making sure, even though my arms are moving in this angle, I would be slapping a tatami mat and people would be yelling at me for doing that. But for the inverter, it doesn't matter. So this definitely feeds into other things I've thought and argued before of like not all cuts, not all sword motions are meant to cut and cleave. And there can be times when your blade path and edge alignment don't line up because it gives you a better bind advantage. And this is an excellent example of something that I've said repeatedly to people and I get dirty looks for, of that I don't care about this cut. This cut isn't meant to hit him. If I get to smack him inside of the face with it, great, but I should have stabbed him the step before. But I'm really keeping this edge vertical, this edge up. And the way I'm approaching doesn't give him anything else to do but that. Right? I'm just doing is, if I can step, I can throw this cut. And if you give me the bind, I make my thrust. All right, so that's step one. It made way more sense than I thought it would. You just have to have faith in the letters and the translators. Thank you to, I don't know, I can't find it. Whoever translated this. Great stuff. All right, so as soon as you bind at his sword with this, hang in the point, indes above, and thrust to his face. If he displaces the thrust and goes up high with his arms, then make a Durchlaufen running through. All right, should he keep his hands low in the displacement? So if he just pushes me hard off to the side, grab his right elbow with your left hand, hold fast, and jump with the left foot in front of his right foot and toss him over it.
Yeah, that's not.
All right, so first we'll do the Durchlaufen, only because I have an idea of what that should be. So starting with the Wecker, these long edge vertical diagonal cuts up. Right, I hang in, go to stab him. If he goes high, I come through, and then I just run and throw him down. Right, that's Durchlaufen. We'll talk about that later in the book when it actually comes up. I'm not going to spend too much time with that. Just know that if hands go high, drop your right hand and set up some kind of throw or grapple from there. Should he keep his hands low in displacement, grab his right elbow with your left hand. So letting go with my left this time. Hold fast and jump with the left foot in front of his right foot and toss him over it. So that's going to be the fun part of this. So coming up. So he stays low. So I guess the assumption here is I'm going to be stepping with this thrust. Grab your right elbow, left. Do you feel thrown?
Not really. I mean, sure, but that Durchlaufen felt like I was gone. This one was like, oh no.
Maybe I grab here up for that.
You got it?
Are you thrown or are you just bending over?
I bent over, yeah. He said your left foot in front of my right foot. Sure, isn't this?
Oh, stepping behind you to do it?
It's like Durchlaufen.
Hold fast and jump with the left foot in front of his right foot and toss him over it. Oh, so the one thing I'm not doing, I'm not springing into your balance.
Ah.
All right, so let's see if that fixes it. And then we might make you switch your feet to see if that changes things as well. All right, so I'm always left foot forward. So here, about that.
It felt better.
Right, so remember, if we said the balance is this even balanced position, notice when Andreas is setting my sword aside, right? I'll set this up real quick. I'm here. he's nicely balanced. He's not really leaned over. I want to spring into that balance. I'm going to take this arm and coming in front of this foot, I'm just going to go here. And you can see without me doing any work, without me having all the extra momentum I would have in a real fight, he's already moving, tripping, falling over. So once again, playing with this, rising up there. I grab, I just spring and not try to kill him. And just for thoroughness, switch your feet and see how that feels for the whole thing. So from the top, I come up. I already don't have that angle anymore. That's interesting. What if I can void your sword and just stab you in the face? Science, man, come on. So, can you cut across more on that path?
I'm in Alva, right? I just rise up.
No, but switch your feet. So I'm saying if I'm here, stop this. How would you stop this for real?
From here, I would use something else.
How would you push it away? Oh, now we're back to the same one.
Right.
Fair enough. No, it's just...
It feels weird coming from that side to be on this foot.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. So I think that made way more sense than I expected in the beginning, which is nice. Oh, look, item. You will find an instruction on how to accomplish the Dirklaufen afterward in the piece that says, make the Dirklaufen, hang with the pommel if you want to wrestle. So there you go. Dirklaufen comes later. Yeah, we have one more failure. This is perfect. So we're going to wrap up here. This will be the last one. Failure twice. When one hits, slice at the same time. Twice further on. Go forward left and don't be lazy. Yeah, science. All right, notice this is called the double failure. Do it as follows. When you approach him in the Zufechten, put your left foot forward and hold your sword at your right shoulder. Once you see that is appropriate for you, spring with your right foot against him onto your right side. Pretend to strike at him with a Fries Verhau to the left side of his head and jerk the strike. So we're here. No. Jump with the left foot to his right side well around him and strike at him with his Ver to his head. When he places it and you hit his sword, then walk off on the same side beside him and cut with the Duplieren into his mouth with the short edge behind the sword. So I walk off here. Otherwise, follow the sword onto both of his arms and cut. You do this on both sides. You can also execute the failure in the same way from an Oberhau or from a Zverhau, just as you like. All right, so again, there's a lot in this one. So find your distance. We're no longer cutting up to speed, but this is just find your distance when you're ready. Jump and throw a Zverhau, but don't actually throw it. Then leap again to the opposite side. When he places this, you sort of walk off on the same beside him. And cut with the Duplieren. So that's the tricky part. All right, so let's play with that. Walk off on the same beside him. So I get to my distance, and I'm happy. So parry that. And I walk off on the same beside you. To me, that kind of just says do that. Because that's my Duplieren. But I'm not super convinced.
Walk off as in walk through while you do it?
Although, all right. So I come up. I like this way less.
Yeah.
All right, so what other sames can be in there? And you just then walk off. Jump with the left foot to his right side. Walk off on the same. Walk off on the right side. Beside him and cut him with duplicate into the mouth. Otherwise, follow the short edge. Follow the sword in both his arms and cut. All right.
So if I don't get the second one, you should do the cut to the arm. Is that what I heard?
I think it's just an or. He doesn't say, doesn't give a solid explanation of either or.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I'm here. He's there. I'm there. So he's saying my short edge, so there, duplicate and there. Let's walk off. Because that gives me the most leverage against it even and protects me. So what can you do from there? Maybe. Not 100% sold on that. We'll play with the second half and see if that ties things together. Otherwise, fall. Fall with the sword on both of his arms and cut. See if I can find the sword slice. I feel like it just means walking in more.
Ah.
Right?
Walking in makes more sense here. You can really press as you walk.
Yeah, but I wonder, it might depend on the angle of your leverage on it coming out and the angle of my leap I get. Like you were super wide.
Mm-hmm.
Where's your sword force? I don't really like walking into your sword like that. I come. Like, what's your reaction here, though?
Oh.
Yeah, so even though I'm kind of walking into your blade and grappling it with my face, your force is this way, so stopping this thing.
Yeah.
So as I walk through, you're not going to do anything with that.
Yeah.
That I'm worried about.
The worst is that I try to get rid of it.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
All right. Well, that finishes up the feller section. So next week we're starting off with, yeah, go for it and don't be lazy. With the Shielhau and the Shealer on page 135. So as always, folks, definitely feel free, comment, ask questions, feedback. If you don't understand something, I'll gladly take some more time and revisit sections. Otherwise, I'll be back Friday with some more of Myers Rapier, and next Monday again here with Jude Lew. Have a good night, and thanks for watching.